Welcome to the Skagit County Track and Field podcast. We're your one-stop shop for all things track and field in Skagit County, home of the longest-running track meet in the state of Washington. We are dedicated to promoting our schools, our athletes, and the incredible sport of track and field. From the heart of the Pacific Northwest, we bring you the latest news, interviews, and insights from the track. Join us as we celebrate the passion, dedication, and triumphs of our local athletes. It's the end of another fantastic season of the Skagit County Track and Field podcast, and we're wrapping things up with a jam-packed finale. In the first half of this episode, join Jake and Johnny as they dive into the Sedro-Woolley Cubs offseason. They'll break down the team's performance from this past year, discuss key returning athletes, and explore what the Cubs are focusing on as they prepare for the 2025 track and field season. Get the inside scoop on their training, goals, and what to expect from Sedro-Woolley next year. Then, in the second half, we're looking ahead to a historic event, the 117th annual Skagit County Meet. We'll preview this iconic competition set to take place in Anacortes in 2025. Jake and Johnny will discuss potential matchups, highlight rising stars, and explore the rich history of this long-standing tradition. Don't miss this exciting preview of what promises to be another thrilling Skagit County Meet. Tune in for all this and more on the season finale of the Skagit County Track and Field podcast. Hey everybody, and welcome to our final episode of Season 2, Episode 8. Should be a fun one. We are looking to, as best we can, preview the 2025 Skagit County Track Meet. We'll talk about seniors that are leaving. We'll talk about who's expected to step up. We'll kind of look at points and where each team might finish based on who they lose. But before that, we kind of wanted to talk about our program. We've heard from all the other county coaches, so we thought it would be cool for our kids that might be listening to this podcast to hear their names and talk about our program a little bit. So Jake and I are here to talk about that for the first couple minutes, and then we'll get into our county meet preview. So, Jake, I guess the first question for you is we both went and joined up with some county coaches down at the Washington State Coaches Association track clinic in Tacoma about a week ago. Just kind of wanted to see how things went, if you had any crazy aha moments while you're there, and just give us a recap of the clinic.
Yeah, sure. Mostly it was, highlighted by Tony Holler and his, people are not familiar with it, Feed the Cats philosophy, his sprint philosophy. So I went through all of those sessions except for the one, which was the one on Saturday morning, which was kind of his big keynote, talking about that just because I had seen that and heard that. I know you went there, so if I missed anything in terms of that, but yeah, that was really it. It was really him, mainly his philosophy on how to train, what to train, which we've adapted to some degree, and so it was good to kind of hear him talk. Really, outside of the Feed the Cat stuff, was the stuff that was most interesting to hear him kind of talk and discuss, and kind of how he got to that particular philosophy of essentially, cutting down the volume in sprinting and just essentially keeping everything fast was really good. So, I mean, it was a good reinforcement on a lot of things that we've done. I didn't really get any too many, things where I'm like, hey, that's really what I want to adapt or use now. But it did get me thinking about, a couple things that we do specifically, with the relay stuff, and I can touch on that here in just a second. So I don't know. What did you think of his keynote?
I thought his keynote was good. I thought that the way they structured it and kind of had him talk was a little bit bass-ackwards. So
Yeah, it would have been nice if he started with that and then kind of went to his other sessions. So
yeah. So for those coaches that haven't been to that clinic or maybe didn't go this year, it's pretty all day Friday and then Saturday morning. So he did 3 presentations, I think, Friday throughout the course of that afternoon. and evening. And then Saturday was kind of like his sales pitch that should have been first. So I ended up taking off after that. But say what you want about him, say whether you agree or not with him. I know he's very uh, extreme, but man, he is a engaging presenter. And
Yeah.
so just to hear him present and know how passionate he was, and then to think about some of the stuff that he said and if it made sense to you or not was good. But yeah, I thought, his keynote speech at the end was kind of a summary of everything else, and it's stuff that I've heard before. But he got emotional at a couple points in time, and I don't know. There was a lot of head nodding going around from other coaches when he would say things, and yeah, he's just a really good presenter, and I'm really glad that our association got him here.
Yeah, no, I think that was a big enough name, obviously, to pull some people in, and then obviously his particular thoughts and strategies and stuff like that. I just really like the emphasis of like having that constant reminder of the less is more, take off days if you need to. Like it's just that grind it into the dirt, mentality. I think is such a relief to get away from. And I know, at least in terms of our numbers, I know he says, get kids to like track. And I think that was probably the thing I got most out of it was he, like, his whole reason for doing this essentially is because his own son, was like, track sucks. I don't want to do track. This is like, it's too hard. It's too much, and he's like, well, if my own kid doesn't want to do it, like, that's such great, like, introspection of like, hey, if my own kid doesn't want to do it, I need to change. Like, if it's not fun for my kid who I'm the track coach, like we're doing this wrong. And so like, I like the idea of like, this should be the best part of your day, that type of thing. So, it's a good philosophy, I think, to be reinforced in terms of what we do and how to do it. So,
Yeah, and we didn't get money to go to the clinic this year. In the past, that's been paid by our athletic department. We've been fortunate with that. But I honestly, I wasn't going to go this year. And then I saw that he was going to be presenting, so I'm like, okay, well then I'll pay for it,
yeah,
through
go
my
for it.
with my
Yeah.
own money. But another good person I saw before we get to relay stuff is I sat in a session with Western Washington, their strength and conditioning coach, and he talked about he's also their throws coach on the track team. But he talked about weightlifting, developing strength, and stuff for speed. And so that was a really good one. He seems like a really knowledgeable guy. He's a resource that we have so close, that I know that if there's coaches that are listening to this, specifically in our county, that have questions on lifting weights and the resistance training part of a speed program, he would be an awesome resource to reach out to. Um, and everybody that's kind of been trained by him, at least in the weight room, has had nothing but good things to say about him. So it was cool to hear him talk. He did a really good job. Any other sessions that you saw that you wanted to talk about?
No, not particularly. Yeah, I didn't really get anything out of it outside of those things. So,
Well, I know one session you went to was on relays, and we are kind of unique at Woolley with the relay handoffs that we use. We're not unique because we want to be. We just think that doing what everybody else does isn't always the best. And we've kind of found some ways that just make sense to us, but we're kind of rethinking those, not because of anything specific, but we're looking at the way that we hand off, specifically in the 4x1 and the 4x2. So we've put a lot of thought to that in the off season, and I just kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit, but where we're at relay wise and handoffs, maybe just kind of go into what we've done in the past and what we're thinking moving forward, if you want to.
yeah, for sure. That was probably one thing I got out of the session was just a time to kind of sit back and look at what we've been doing, and if we want to continue kind of doing that. I think the more unique thing in terms of the 4x2 is something that you and I saw a team out in I think Illinois that does a flyby. And so, of course, we're like intrigued by it. And then we're like, okay, well, is this something that we can do? and we've input that. So it's our last year was our second year doing that process. And I find that it's effective. I think it um, essentially allowing the incoming runner to um, continue to maintain speed. They'll run by the outgoing runner, um, and taking that handoff essentially after they've been passed, and so they have to build up and chase and then grab that night. At least for our first two handoffs, we're able to do that. Obviously, with the stagger that we have in this state, we can't do it on the last one, so we just do an adapted open hand, which is what a lot of people end up doing. Um, I don't know. Yeah, we looked at maybe going back to just an open hand, but I just find that those, when we have those two, I still think we get enough speed outgoing that anything that we have decreasing on the incoming, is limited. And so, um, I think we'll keep that moving forward for the 4x2. For the 4x1, we shifted last year to the under sweep, and I think there was some advantage to it. One thing I really like about that handoff is that you can maintain the lane together essentially. And so if you have an issue with the outgoing runner being a little bit late, it still allows that incoming runner to almost be able to maintain their speed with that runner. And even if you got passed, technically you could still get the handoff off. And so, there are, I think with any of the handoffs we have, like the biggest issue is going too early. And I don't think there's any way to solve that with a handoff necessarily. So I think it's just a matter of which one's most effective in keeping the baton going around as fast as possible. I think the limitation that we have with the one that we went to last year is the target point of the handoff. And, when you're grabbing it sort of in this particular situation from the person and they get it and they don't get the handoff at the end. And so they have to like either do this motion with their hand where they're having to move the baton up, or they end up jabbing it against themselves to try to push it. And I think, that's kind of one thing we looked at as to whether or not that was a limitation enough or that we saw it enough. I mean, it's hard to say because, on the girls' side, we've broken the school record, but I mean, we've broken the school record because we have some of the fastest girls that we've had come through this, program, I think. And so I don't know how much of the handoff is affecting that. You and I had talked about maybe having a conversation with one of our former athletes that's been, done both to see if we go back to, the extension and the hand being back.
Yeah, more of the push pass type.
Push pass, yeah. So, like I said, I think the biggest thing is I don't want it to be a disadvantage in terms of the handoff, because I don't know if the handoff is that great an advantage at our high school level. So, I mean, are we causing too many issues with that under sweep to where, just going back to the push simplifies it and, creates a better target essentially for the baton to get there, and creates a better opportunity for the person who's getting the baton to really have it where they need it. And I think that's probably what we need to look at. I don't know if the spacing on either one of those is really that big of a difference, because I do think the way we teach that push, it still allows that incoming runner, if the person's late, to kind of run next to them and to give that, and you can still kind of work it with that. It's not quite as natural in the running motion as the underhand, and that's one thing I do like it, is that if I miss, or either miss giving the baton or miss taking the baton, I'm never really out of my running motion. Whereas with the push, again, you're slightly out. What you don't want, obviously, is when they start turning their shoulders. I still think you can do that push and come back into it if you don't get it. And so I think that, keeps your running efficiency and everything in place. So yeah, we got about a month to figure out, which one we're going to go to. But that was one thing I got out of, when I was at that conference that you and I were kind of discussing. So yeah, we'll see what we end up going with that one. So
Yeah, those are fun things to talk about and to think about, especially when, our majority of our girl relay teams are going to be back. I mean, we miss Raven for sure. But everybody else is primarily back, and it's cool to have those conversations with that end result in mind. So,
Well, and I talked a little bit about the Washington one, but you just got back from Portland. Went to the Oregon Coaches Association clinic down there. I wanted to see, what you got out of that, and if there's anything worth sharing or thinking about, or sessions you really enjoyed.
it was a good clinic. They treat you pretty good down there at Oregon. They give you t-shirts and water bottles and food and everything else. So, yeah, it was cool. We used to go to that when it was at the Nike campus, and now it's at the Sheridan near the airport. And there were some Washington State people there. Two presenters from Seahome presented on Saturday. That was Tim Carlson, their throws coach, and Kevin Ryan, their head coach. So they presented Saturday, and then Friday night, I went and watched Eric Hysaw, who's a podcast alum. He was on earlier this season from Walla Walla. He talked about the hurdles and did a great job. So, yeah, good clinic, good all around speakers. They've got some guys and some gals that present that are a little more, I don't know. They like to get former Olympians there. I know I've seen a couple former Olympians at that clinic. Um, and yeah, those guys are good. It's just sometimes it's hard to relate to what we do in high school. They're talking about training world-class medal athletes. And we just don't have that amount of skill and elitism, I guess, at the high school level. But it's always good to hear them. The one surprise was they had a change in speaker, and the head coach, and actually I don't know if he was the head coach, but he's been at George Fox, coaching different events for the last 15 years, and he talked about sprints, which of course I was interested in, and a lot of the same um, things that Holler talked about. He talked about. He said that they're very short and very small in their volume, but very high in their intensity, and talked about the different energy systems involved and how to best train those. And again, he's got the advantage of doing that in a, you know, collegiate calendar, and we have to condense everything to 12 weeks. But yeah, pretty cool clinic. I would definitely go back to that one again. Um, and it's kind of a little bit different than the Washington one. It's late Friday night and then all day Saturday. Um, so I guess depending on how much you value your weekends, that could be a good one or a bad one. But we stayed at a McMenamins down there again, and it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. And then I know we talked about this upcoming year, and more specifically with the sprint program, and not that we're making any massive changes, but do you want to talk a little bit about the change or tweak that we have going into this season?
Yeah, and you know, again, this is just minutia in terms of what we're looking at, but we used to kind of split our sprint training into three blocks or three sessions. And we were pretty acceleration based on the front end. So like maybe like a 2-to-1 ratio of acceleration workouts to max velocity. And I got this from Boo Schexnader. And then about halfway in between in that block two, you're about a 1-to-1 ratio with acceleration and max velocity focus. And then at the end of the year, it flips. So you're like 2-to-1 max velocity to acceleration. Um, so to recap, you're doing a lot more acceleration stuff in the beginning. Middle of the year, you're doing even amounts, and then at the end of the season, you're doing a lot more max velocity stuff. And I think the purpose there is just to generally increase intensity as you work through the season. Because if you just stay at the same intensity, your body adapts 3 to 4 weeks and then can plateau. So, in saying that, our workouts last year, when we did acceleration workouts, I never really felt like we got a good enough workout, and I think that's okay. But if there's a way to still microdose and be able to hit max velocity a little more often, just to get a little bit more volume in, that was something that I kind of wanted to look at. And then probably the most obvious thing is whenever we did a max velocity run or max velocity workout, we would generally time the last or the later part of the sprint. So for instance, we might sprint 30 into a 10-yard fly, so 40 yards total, but just that last 10 is timed. And what ended up happening is our kids built that more of like a build up. So that first 30 yards sometimes was really slow, and then they try to hit the gas, that last 10, and that's not quite how it works. So I kind of wanted to remedy that as well. So, anyways, long story short, this year, what I think we're going to do is just stick to max velocity workouts, but cut the number of reps that we do. So that way we're not overdosing the kids and we can keep our volume still low. Um, but we will have an acceleration component to that. So if you go back to how I explained the max velocity workouts, they were timed on the last 10 yards of their 40-yard run. So now we're going to use 4 cones. Your sprinter starts here, and from 0 to 10, they're going to get an acceleration time. And then they'll have a given distance depending on where we're at in the season that isn't timed in the middle. And then on the back end, we'll time their last 10 yards, and we'll do that in miles per hour. So each sprint will get 2 times. They'll have an acceleration time, and then they'll have a max velocity time at the end. And then we've kind of come up with a neat little, math equation to give them a sprint number. So we'll take their max velocity, miles per hour. Obviously, the higher the better on that. And then we'll divide it by their acceleration time in seconds. And obviously, the lower the better in that. And you'd have a sprint number that we'll post and the kids could see. What happened last year is we would do acceleration workouts, and we would have kids that, scored top 4, top 5 in that. And, they'd be like, hey, on the leaderboard, it says I should be working toward a relay. Like, I think I'm ready. And it's like, well, yeah, you smoked everybody the first 20 yards. But you got to understand that a sprint is at least 100 meters or longer. So you've still got, 80 meters to cover. And so this might be a way to kind of navigate that and to work on 2 things at once. So kind of excited with that. We've also kind of changed our pre-meet practices, made them a little bit more potentiation based as opposed to recovery based. But yeah, I'm looking forward to another good year of training those guys, and should be fun.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to start using that number and seeing how that looks over the season. So I don't know. Should be again having that measurable data is just so useful. So I mean, just
Yeah, well, it better work because we had to buy 4 new cones, which cost us a pretty penny. So it better. Okay, hey, do you want to jump into the county recap? I'm sorry, the county preview for next year?
County preview. Yep.
Okay, good. So for the listeners, this is kind of what we'll do. We'll kind of recap just briefly results from last year's county meet, and then I will kind of talk about the seniors that might have scored points, and we'll kind of group that by event type. And then Jake will kind of go through the returners, maybe just the top returners, and who's coming back for this year to hopefully score points. And then I looked at all the seniors and subtracted their points, and I can give some approximate county meet scoring totals to see where teams might finish this next year. So if you're ready to roll, you want to jump into the sprints first, then I'll kind of talk about the seniors leaving, and then you can talk about who's returning.
Okay. Yeah, I know we talked about it in the last podcast, but obviously winners Anacortes, both on the boys and girls side. And we'll talk a little bit about this when we talk about returners. But in terms of points, on the boys side, they scored a tremendous amount of points in the sprint, over 57 points between the relays and the individual sprints. And then distance-wise on the guys' side, again, another 34 points. And we'll talk about the individual that will be returning for that one. So, and then for the girls, they scored a majority of their points in the distance events, not only winning but having a lot of depth. So they ended up having 70 total points in that, and then did a great job in the field events with the triple high being top point getters there, and then their discus and jab winners. So again, overall, both boys and girls on the Anacortes side, really a lot of top end, and then a lot of depth in those events. So
Okay, so if we jump into sprints, we've got leaving us Karsten Reynolds from Sedro-Woolley. He was third last year. Dalton Kurtz-Rios from Mount Vernon. He was fourth last year. And Tommy Murdoch from LaConner. He was sixth last year. So those are the only three seniors that we lose in 100. I'll just go 200 and 400 as well, and then Jake, you can go from there. In the two, Tommy Murdoch was second, so LaConner loses 8 points there. Carson Reynolds from Sedro-Woolley was fourth, and crazily enough, in the 400 meters, there were 0 seniors that scored. So looks like 3 in the 100, 2 in the 200. So we lose 5 sprinters next year and should be pretty competitive for this next season.
yeah, and on the guys' side, returning obviously the Beener brothers from Anacortes, Brock and Brady. Um, Brady won the 100 meters. He won the 200 meters. Brock was third. They've got Zeke Hawkins as well, who finished second in the 100 meters. So they're going to be looking, again, in terms of their returning core, pretty strong with those. And as you talked about with the 400, which is just crazy, it's top 4 were sophomores, and then fifth was a ninth grader. So not only returning, but obviously we're going to have some continued returning. But Evan Forthune, and I'm sorry if I got that last name wrong. And then obviously Jackson Silver went 1-2 in the 400 meter. Alejandro Ocha is also going to be returning from Mount Vernon. So those are going to be some top sprinters on the guys' side. So it's still, again, a couple seniors leaving, but most of the people that were our top getters in the 1, 2, and the 4 are going to be returning. So on the guys' side.
So in the 110 hurdles, Tommy Murdoch will graduate from LaConner. He won that race last year, so 10 points. Jaden Larm from Sedro-Woolley finished seventh. In the 300 hurdles, Tommy Murdoch won that one as well from LaConner. And then Ben Summers from Burlington Edison was fifth. So those guys move on. So there again, I mean, it's 4 guys in 2 events scoring. So pretty young field as well. In the relays, this one's tough, but Anacortes loses Landon Schaefer. They finished first. Mount Vernon finished second in that race. They only lose one guy, Dalton Kurtz-Rios. Sedro-Woolley was third. They lose Shane Whitehouse and Karsten Reynolds. And Burlington Edison was fourth. They lose Jacob Gonzalez. But everybody else is back for that 4x1. The 4x4 is even more crazy. Burlington Edison won the 4x4 last year. Ben Summers was their only senior on that team. Anacortes returns everybody. Mount Vernon returns everybody. Sedro-Woolley loses Shane Whitehouse, but return everybody else. Mount Vernon Christian returns everybody. LaConner returns everybody. So again, super young on the guys' sprints and hurdles.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, especially with that 110 and the 300 hurdles. We've got Amari Prue from Mount Vernon, and then Ethan DeYoung, and then Luca Moore from Anacortes, who are all kind of in that top 3, both in the 300 and the 110. So they're all back. So it'll be interesting to see how that looks going into next year's meet.
Okay, so if you look at the 1, the 2, and the 4, both hurdle races and the relays, Anacortes will lose 2.5 points of all those where they were the strongest, at least on the guy's side. Sedro-Woolley loses 15 points. Mount Vernon loses 7. Burlington loses about 7.5. LaConner loses 31. So Tommy Murdoch was a big point getter, and losing him is going to hurt LaConner. And Mount Vernon Christian loses 0 points in the guys' sprint. So moving on to the female side, we've got a few more senior departures on the girls' side. So in the 100, Mount Vernon loses Parker Halgren, who won that event last year. Sedro-Woolley loses Raven Story, who was fourth, and Tasia Penny from Sedro-Woolley was fifth. In the 200, it's those same three. So Parker won it last year. Raven was third. Tasia was fifth. And then in the 400, Josephine Swinsburns, and then her name cuts off, from Mount Vernon Christian was sixth. If you look at the hurdles, Anacortes loses 10 points from Amy Hansen in the 100 hurdles, and then Burlington Edison, Mandy Richardson, she was second. So wide open for the 100-meter hurdles next year. On the 300 hurdles, Amy Hansen from Anacortes was second. And that's it on the girls' side for the hurdles. As far as relays go, like we said earlier, Mount Vernon, who won the 4x1, loses Parker. They were first. Sedro-Woolley loses Raven Story. Burlington was third in that event. They lose Mandy Richardson. And LaConner, who was fifth in that event, loses Morgan Huizinga. In the 200, 4x2, Mount Vernon again losing Parker Halgren. They were first. Sedro-Woolley loses two on that squad. That was second. Tasia Penny and Raven Story. Burlington was third in the 4x2. They lose Mandy Richardson. Mount Vernon Christian loses Josephine Swinburnson. They were fourth last year. LaConner was fifth, and they lose Morgan Huizinga. And Anacortes was sixth. They lose Amy Hansen in the 4x2. In the 4x4, Sedro-Woolley was first last year. They lose one runner, McKendra McCarty. Anacortes was second. They bring back everybody. Burlington Edison was third. They bring back everybody. Mount Vernon was fourth, and they lose Taylor Hoyer. And then Mount Vernon Christian was fifth. They lose Josephine Swinburnson again. And then LaConner was sixth, and they bring everybody back.
Yeah, so it looks like we'll be interesting to see too with the 100 and the 200 because it was entirely Mount Vernon and Sedro-Woolley outside of LaConner having a runner in the 200 meters. So losing a couple, three in there will be interesting to see who kind of fills in those slots from any of the other schools. But obviously, Lila Self and Elise Pickering coming back in the 100 meters. Some of the top ones there. Got Kayla Worm, obviously, from Woolley coming back, and then Nora Chenault, who will be in that. And she was second in the 200, Nora was. And so, yeah, it'll be with those 100 and 200 meter sprints to see who kind of fills in for those three ladies that are moving on. In the 400, as we talked about, the one senior, but all those individuals are returning. So Kirsten, who won it last year, Kiana Jenkins, and obviously Elise Pickering are the top three, and they were all non-seniors who are coming back. So it will be exciting, especially in that 400, to see kind of if those names return. So, and Kirsten is going to be her. Is she a three-peater on that one?
Well, she's won it twice. We'll see if she can
Won
three-peat.
twice. Yeah,
We hope
that's right.
so.
That's right. We hope so. Yeah.
You want to go through hurdles next?
Yep. Yeah, 100 and 300 hurdles. Logan from Anacortes, who won the 300 hurdles, obviously returning. Lydia Grossglass from LaConner, and then Reagan Hunt from Anacortes, the top three that are returning for the 300 hurdles. And then for the 100 hurdles, Sydney Briggs from Burlington, again, Lydia Grossglass from LaConner, and then Annika Brunk from Mount Vernon Christian are the top three returning with that one. And then again, there's some sophomores and juniors kind of sprinkled throughout there that should be competitive.
Okay. So the girls, Anacortes ends up losing 18 and a half points. Sedro-Woolley ends up losing 27 and a half points. Mount Vernon ends up losing 26. Burlington ends up losing 11. Mount Vernon Christian 5. And LaConner ends up losing 2 points. And that's through the relays, the sprints, and the hurdles. You You ready to get into jumps?
Yeah.
Okay, so first we'll look at boys high jump. In the boys high jump, looks like there are three folks that will lose this year. Shane Whitehouse won county last year in the high jump with a jump of 6 feet from Sedro-Woolley. He'll move on and graduate. Landon Schaefer from Anacortes took fifth, and Kyan Brewer from Sedro-Woolley took sixth. So three seniors disappear. Um, and a returning high placer in state at Anacortes with Zeke will be back in that event. In vault, only two vaulters leave us. So that's Charlie Pearson from Burlington Edison. He took second last year at county. And then Ben Summers, also from Burlington, took sixth. When we look at long jump, again, only two. Shane Whitehouse from Sedro-Woolley finished second. And Luke Wright from Mount Vernon finished eighth. And then triple jump, it looks like we lose three. So Jacob Gonzalez from Burlington Edison finished fourth. Right behind him was Luke Wright from Mount Vernon, who finished fifth. And then Cameron Folks scored a point for Sedro-Woolley, finishing eighth in the triple. Jake, do you want to go through top returners in those four events?
Yeah, and you talked about high jump, and Zeke's name's going to come up more than once. So Zeke Hawkins, who finished quite well at the state 2A meet, and then Ethan DeYoung from Sedro-Woolley coming back, also junior this year, and then Brennan Morgenthaler from Anacortes. So all three of those guys were sophomores last year. They're going to come back as juniors, and then they're the top three that we have looking like. And Zeke and Stu, I don't know about Brennan, but I know beyond county, they definitely hit higher marks. So Zeke was 5'10", and Ethan was 5'8", and I think they both hit considerably higher later on in the season. So be good there. And then as you talked about at the top, three in pole vault. Only one was a senior. So our top three returning, Alexander McKenzie, who won it at 12.6 in Burlington Edison, Talon Upson, Sedro-Woolley 11 feet, and Jordan Janicki, who finished fourth, also got 11 from Sedro-Woolley. And then so we've got two Woolley and two Burlington, which if you look at the pole vault from last year, the top six was Burlington and Woolley, who were well represented in those. So good mark there. And then long jump, Brady Beener won it last year at 2011. He'll be coming back. Jackson Silver finished third. He was the was it 2B or 1B? Were they 1B last year?
Yes.
He won state last year in his classification. So,
no, they were two because I remember them talking
yeah.
about cross country this year moving down.
Yeah. So Jackson Silver, who won state in his classifications, coming back, and Spencer Betts from Burlington. And then I know Pete highlighted Yondell, who was an eighth grader who jumped 19 feet as an eighth grader. So also coming back. So that'll be, again, competitive there. And then triple, again, Zeke again, 42.11 he won it with. I don't know what he ended up jumping toward the end of the season, but he definitely continued to improve
I think
that.
I think 42.11 was his PR at county.
PR?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, set it at county.
And then Jensen King, who was at 40'2", also PR'd, and then Ty Swap from Anacortes, the top three. So the top three finishers in triple jump last year, all returning. Two who are going to be juniors and one that's going to be a senior. So again, we got a lot of returning winners and top three finishers for the boys on the jump side.
Which brings us to the girls. We'll go through same event order. So in the high jump, Morgan Huizinga from LaConner took fifth last year. She'll graduate, and then Georgia Collins, who tied with a slew of people at sixth place last year, will also be gone. In vault, your event winner, your county champ from last year graduates. That's Evelyn Bradbury from Burlington Edison. She went 8 feet. Cadence Smith from Mount Vernon Christian took fourth. Molly Cabe from Burlington was sixth. And Aileen Kim from Anacortes was seventh. So we lose four different female vaulters to graduation. In long jump, only one, Josephine Swinburnson from Mount Vernon Christian, who took third last year, will not be back, but everybody else in girls long jump will. That should be a pretty competitive event. And then the triple jump outside of Reagan Hunt, who won it last year from Anacortes with a jump of 33 feet, 9.5 inches. Should be pretty wide open after her. So Amy Hansen took second last year. She graduates from Anacortes. Georgia Collins was third from Sedro-Woolley. And then Itzel Espinosa from Mount Vernon took seventh. So again, I think up at the top of that event should be pretty close and competitive.
Yeah, and as we go back and look at who's coming back, Anacortes finished 1, 2, and 3 in the high jump, and all three of those jumpers should be returning. So Carmen Wara, Reagan Hunt, Tegan Lipke, all be returning. And then again, an eighth grader, Grace Mounts from Mount Vernon, finished just right behind at 410. So actually tied for third. So quite a few. Well, the top four essentially returning in high jump, and the winners there. And the winning jump was 5 foot, and it was a PR for Carmen at the time. In pole vault, as you said, our winner was a senior, but the next two, junior and a sophomore, so Lane Davis from Anacortes, Dagny Sloan from Burlington, and then Kalia Westergaard from Sedro-Woolley be the top three that would be returning for the pole vault. Lane Davis was just behind Evelyn Bradbury at 7'6", and so was Dagny Sloan. So it came down to jumps and attempts on that. And then long jump, our county winner, Kirsten Hendricks from Sedro-Woolley, will be coming back. Sydney Briggs from Burlington Edison, and then Grace Mounts again, another eighth grader again from Mount Vernon. She's only going to be a ninth grader coming in. So Sydney will be a sophomore, and Kirsten will be in her senior year as we go through that. And I think Kirsten, what we say, that's 2 years in a row long jump, so she'll be coming back as potential
three-peater.
Yep, potential three-peater. So you talked about Reagan, 33.95. She'll be coming back as the winner. And then the next two are seniors, but then we've got Emerson Oxbergen from Mount Vernon Christian and Tegan Litke again from Anacortes. So again, Anacortes, obviously that's part of the reason they won this meet is because they've got so many points in the jumps and they have a lot returning. So.
Okay, so recap on your jumps. For the guys' side, Anacortes will graduate 4 points. Sedro-Woolley graduates the most amount, so 22 points lost. Mount Vernon loses 5 points in the jumps. Burlington will graduate 16, and then LeConner and Mount Vernon Christian lose nothing. So everybody back for them. On the girls' side, Anacortes loses 10 points. Sedro-Woolley loses 9. Mount Vernon loses 2. Burlington graduates 13 points. Mount Vernon Christian loses 11, and LeConner graduates 4. So every school loses a little bit on the girls' jumps.
Ready to go throws.
Okay, we'll go guys first. Shot put to start us off. Adrian Carrillo from Mount Vernon graduates. He finished second last year. Kyle Lessman from Anacortes finished third. Jaden Larm from Sedro-Woolley finished fifth. And then Matthew Diaz from Mount Vernon finished seventh. So 4-point scores from the shot put will leave us. In discus, big loss for Mount Vernon. Adrian Carrillo won that with a throw of 159 feet, 4 3/4 inch. He graduates. Our fourth place finisher, Alexander Martin from LeConner. Isaac from Mount Vernon Christian. Latulipe, I'll call it, finished fifth place. And then Michael Amarias from Mount Vernon, who is in seventh in the disc, also takes off. So we lose 4 in the shot, 4 in the disc, and then we lose 3 in the jab. So Jaden Kuipers from Mount Vernon Christian, who finished second in the jab. Cole Knott from Mount Vernon finished third, and then Matthew Diaz from Mount Vernon finished eighth.
And if we look at, again, our returning county champion, Quentin Gustafson, will be there. Tyson Bach, who was a ninth grader, finished fourth. And Quentin threw 48-2. So he had a 3-foot lead essentially on that one. Tyson threw 46.5. And then in sixth place, Braden Mickle from Anacortes. So I might have messed that one up, but he threw 40 and 1.5 inches. So 40 feet in there. And typically, I know in the shot put, especially, it tends to be a little bit um, higher scoring for our juniors and seniors. So we had a ninth grader and a 10th grader, and Isel Morales, 10th grader, finishing eighth. So we had some underclassmen kind of squeaking in there. But again, typically it's juniors and seniors because obviously the strength and everything as it goes through. But like I said, we got a returning county champion there. And then in discus, our runner-up, Jacob Hunley from Sedro-Woolley, will be returning for his senior year. Landon Blanken from Mount Vernon Christian, who finished third. And then Brendan Mickle from Anacortes. Should have got that last name before he got there. I was repeating them. But he'll be a sophomore going in his junior year. So and Huntley was at 124 feet 9.5 inches, and Landon Blinken was at 122 an inch and 3/4. So they were fairly close together with each other in terms of the throws. Adrian almost at 160, so winning that was pretty impressive. So and then in the jab, our returning county champion Ty Swap from Anacortes for 143 feet. Then fourth place is Del Morales from Burlington Edison through 132 feet 9 inches, and then Quentin Cobbs 130 feet 10 inches. It was fifth place, so he would be third returning underclassman. So we got two seniors coming in, and then a junior from Burlington Edison for those throws.
Good. And then we go to the girls' side, and the shot put is, and actually all three throws, shot, disc, jab. There's only one senior in each throw that graduates. So throws will be back on the girls' side next year strong, and a lot of returners with experience should make for a good couple days of track and field, at least in the throw events. So let's get into that. Shot put, your county champ, Mashanti Brown from Sedro-Woolley, threw 33 feet 6 inches. She was well ahead of second place, but she graduates. So she'll be gone. In discus, you got to go all the way down to fifth place before you get someone who graduates, and that's Mashanti Brown again from Sedro-Woolley. And then in the JAV, your third place finisher, Morgan Heisinger from LaConner, finished third. So only three girls in quite a few spots there for the throws.
Yeah, and then returning and shot put again. Anacortes finished second with 27 feet 10 inches. That's Madeline Ward, so she'll be coming back. Mount Vernon and Woolley both had ninth graders that finished right behind their third and fourth. Faina Fumiano. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. And then Brooklyn Deers from Sedro-Woolley be the top three. But like you said, we only had that one senior. So the rest of the top eight scorers essentially are all returning in shot put. And as you said before, we only had a fifth place winner that was a senior. So our top four for the discus, again, Madeline Ward, strong showing at county, second in shot put. First in the disc, Brooklyn, who finished high in the shot, fourth place, gets second here, and then Jordan Zaharis from Anacortes, again another Anacortes thrower, coming in there at third place. The winner, Madeline, threw 89 feet. Brooklyn was just right behind her at 88 and 5.5 inches. And then for jab, like you said, Morgan really is the only senior, so we've got two juniors that'll be going in their senior year. One from Anacortes, who won it, Hannah Ferrero, 111 feet 10 inches, and then Emma Kuzman from Mount Vernon, who threw 105 and 10 inches, and then Addison Wiggle from LaConner threw 94. She finished first. So those, again, within the top three, had four underclassmen. So we've got, again, that slew of people returning. So we'll see if Hannah can return there, just like Madison Ward in the jab and disc. So.
Yeah, so to recap throws on the guys' side, Anacortes graduates 6 points. Sedro-Woolley graduates 4 points. Mount Vernon, this is kind of where they're going to take their biggest dip in points into next year. They lose 29 points. Burlington Edison loses 0. LaConner loses 5, and Mount Vernon Christian graduates 12 points. And then on the girls' side, it's us and LaConner are the only two teams that lose points. So Anacortes returns everybody. We lose 14 points here at Woolley. Mount Vernon brings back everyone. Burlington brings back everyone. Mount Vernon Christian brings back everybody. And then LaConner loses out on 6 points. Next event, and this is going to be short for me, is distance. Because on the guys' side, nobody in the 8 that scored a point, nobody in the 16 that scored a point, nobody in the 32 that scored a point is a senior. So we have every single person back that scored a point last year at county in the distance events. So you want to just go through like the top 3? I know this will be a
Yeah, I
recap
mean
from our first
we're gonna see
podcast,
him.
but
Yeah, we talked about this when we talked about the county meet initially, but Nicholas Hoyer and Dylan Roel, they battled in every distance events. 16 and 18 being the most competitive for Dylan against Nicholas. So they're going to be impressive to watch again coming back. I think 154 for Hoyer in the 800 won it. And Dylan Roel was at 137, and then Aiden Miller came in at third from Anacortes, running sub 2 at 159, which again, running sub 2 at the end of April is just incredibly impressive. So 1600, same thing, even tighter race between Dylan and Nicholas. Dylan won with a 420, Nicholas 420.4. So really just right behind. And again, that was one of the more impressive races.
yeah, I'll run that one back anytime.
Yeah,
Watch that again.
yeah, of the year. And then and a great time from sophomore Caitlin Hawkins with a 428 from Burlington Edison coming back. But like you said, just impressive that one senior in that grouping. And then 3200, Dylan ran away with it pretty well, running a 921, and again running a 920 at any time. But at the end of April, it's pretty impressive feat at that point in time. Caleb Hawkins from Burlington Edison coming in at 938, very, very impressive time. And then Noah Brown, a junior going into his senior year, he finished at 10 minutes and 3 seconds. So that was your top 3 finishers in the race, and the top 3 coming back. So like we said, it's going to be exciting for those.
Yeah, and then on the girls' side, it's a little bit different of a story. So let's take the 800 meters first. Sedro-Woolley will graduate McKendra McCarty. She finished 5th in that race. Casey Limerick from Anacortes also graduates. She was 6th. But your top end talent, at least from last year, is back for the 800. A little bit different in the 16. So Casey Limerick from Anacortes was 2nd. McKendra McCarty from Sedro-Woolley was 3rd. And those folks will graduate on. And then in the 32, similar to the 16, we lose 3 ladies. So Casey Limerick and McKendra McCarty will graduate. They finished 2nd and 3rd, respectively. And then Carolyn Chambers from Anacortes finished 8th in that race.
And then returning, the top 4 will be returning. So Mary Boger from Anacortes won it with a 222. Kate Griggs, who almost took all 3 distance events, finished with a 223. And then Emily Panetta from Anacortes at 227. That was your top 3 finishers for there. And it went 1, 2, 3 Anacortes, and all of them are returning. So exciting for Anacortes.
Oh boy.
1600. As I said before, Kate almost won all 3 of the distance events. She did win the 1600, and she won it with about a 10-second lead. So she ran a 512, beating Casey and McKendra. And then finishing 4th was Mary Boger, a 9th grader who's going to be a sophomore coming in. She ran a 528. Again, she won the 800, so she'll be returning. And that Layla Stampanoni from Mount Vernon, who was a sophomore last year, ran a 532 and finished 5th. So they essentially are potentially that top 3 going into that. And then again, Kate Griggs winning the 3200 with a time of 11:17. Again, at the end of April. That's incredibly impressive. And then in fourth, you had Layla again from Mount Vernon with a 12:02. And then Jocelyn, who finished fifth, Jocelyn Serrano from Burlington Edison with a 12:04. So those would be your top three coming back with that. Again, we've got quite a few returning, obviously returning county champions for the distance events on both sides, and several top finishers.
Yeah, so when you recap, I mean, the guys' side, like we said earlier, is easy. Nobody graduates any points. On the girls' side, Anacortes is going to lose 19. Sedro-Woolley will lose 16. But Mount Vernon, Burlington, Mount Vernon Christian, and LaConner don't lose any points in the girls' distance races. So they've got everybody coming back. Okay, to put a little wrap on this episode and this season, I guess. Here are kind of your returning points totals for the guys and the girls side, and I'll put them in order. So Anacortes returns 171 and a half points on the guys side. So they are another year as a big favorite. This is where it's going to get interesting. There are 5 points in between the amount of points that Woolley brings back, Burlington brings back, and Mount Vernon brings back. So Woolley on paper brings back 91 points. Burlington Edison brings back 90 and a half, so a half point between those two schools. And then Mount Vernon brings back 86. So that fight for second, third, and fourth is going to be something to pay attention to, and probably the closest race in terms of final outcome on both the guys and the girls side. Mount Vernon Christian brings back 33 points on the guys side, and LaConner brings back 17. Switching over to the ladies, just as big of a of a lead. Anacortes brings back 164 and a half points. Sedro-Woolley brings back 90 and a half. Mount Vernon brings back 84. Burlington brings back 71 and a half points. Mount Vernon Christian 45, and then LaConner brings back 43 and a half to round out the girls' side. So, I think if this is a true preview podcast, the preview might be that on Anacortes is set to win on both sides of the meet, and it's really theirs to lose. And then that fight for second and third and fourth between Woolley, Mount Vernon, and Burlington. And I would argue on both sides of the meet, the guys and the girls side, will be something to watch. And then we'll see if Mount Vernon and Christian and LaConner can flip fortune and try to beat each other out for those last couple spots. So again, should be interesting. But again, Anacortes heavy favorites.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Although they lost a lot more points on the girls' side than I thought, even though they still have a lot returning. That's how many points they scored. So 212 last year
Yeah.
on the girls' side. So, and then not as many points on the boys' side for them as I thought. I mean, they had 184, and you said 171's returning.
Yep.
So yeah, that's significant. So
Yeah. Well, I think I'm excited for this year. I'm excited for this track season, obviously. I always get pumped up for county. It's the one meet where we pool all of our resources together and put kids in as many events as we think that they can score in. And I know all the other county coaches do, a similar philosophy on that because it matters to everybody. And it gives you bragging rights for one more year. I'm super pumped that Anacortes is hosting. I love their track. I love their facility. So it'll be cool to get out there. We haven't been out there to a big meet in a long, long time. So it will be nice for them to host county. And it could be a really special week for that school. I mean, they're favored to win boys and girls, and they're hosting. It could be a pretty special night. And then it's up to the other schools if they want to, try to foil that, try to ruin it. So again, pumped up. All the coaches listening out there, I'm excited to share this year with you, and can't wait for the seed meeting on Monday night, wherever that ends up being. And we got full day of prelims on Wednesday. We got our pole vault headed on Thursday, and then a full day of finals late in the evening on Friday. So pretty pumped up. Anything else from you, Jake?
Yeah, just real quick. Well, pole vault and jav this year on that Thursday. And
That's right.
then
That's right.
I think that the most exciting thing for me, and again, obviously it's from our personal thing, but I know other coaches see it as well. Because we're kind of throwing everything at the board. Sometimes you get some kids that stick that was their first or second time ever doing an event, and then they really feel confident moving forward. So I know we had a couple kids step up for our end, and I know again some other schools did as well. So that's always exciting to kind of see, hey, this might be your new event. And, you kind of find out right as you're rolling into sub districts and districts. So,
Okay, well, I guess that's it. This is us signing
yeah,
off for season
season
two.
two.
Jake, I appreciate everything you've done along the way. It's been fun. Hopefully, the people listening got out of it what they thought, and we will, be back before you know it for season three.
All right. Sounds good.